All right, let's get our songbooks. 181. We'll sing the first and the last. 181. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Peace on earth and mercy mild, God and sinners reconciled. Joyful all ye nations rise, join the triumph of the skies. Hosts proclaim, Christ is born in Bethlehem. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Come, desire of nations, come, fix in us thy humble home. Rise the woman's conquering seed, bruise in us a serpent's head. Adam's likeness now efface, stamp thine image in its place. Second Adam from above, reinstate us in thy love. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Very good. Yes, and a little extra.
That was a star.
All right. Genesis chapter 38. Genesis 38. We get a shift here for a moment, and we get a focus on Judah. He's a pivotal character in the book of Genesis, and if you're familiar with the line of Christ, he is part of the line of Christ. Christ comes through the line of Judah, and Judah ends up being a type of Christ. But we see some horrible things in Judah's life, and I believe this chapter is a turning point for Judah. Like we see the beginning of it, but then I believe at the end of the chapter, we see Judah starting to make some changes in his life for the better. And so we don't get to see, like it happens, we see a start and then we don't see him again until sometime down the road. But it's very evident there's some changes that have been made in Judah, because the next time we see him, he's trying to do what's right. Look in Genesis 38. We'll read verses 1 through 11. It says, "And it came to pass at that time that Judah went down from his brethren and turned into a certain Adullamite whose name was Hira. And Judah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua, and he took her and went in unto her. And she conceived and bare a son, and he called his name And she conceived again and bare a son, and she called his name Onan. And she yet again conceived and bare a son, and called his name Shelah. And he was at Kezib when she bare him. And Judah took a wife for his firstborn, whose name was Tamar. And Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. And the Lord said unto Onan, Go in unto thy brother's wife, and marry her, and raise up seed to thy brother. And Onan knew that the seed should not be his. And it came to pass, when he went in unto his brother's wife, that he spilled it on the ground, lest that he should give seed to his brother. And the thing which he did displeased the Lord, wherefore he slew him also. Then said Judah to Tamar his daughter-in-law, Remain a widow at thy father's house, till Shelah my son be grown, for he said, lest peradventure he die also, as his brethren did. And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house. Let's go to God in a word of prayer tonight. Lord, we ask that you would bless this time as we study your word. Give us wisdom as we look at this passage and we learn from the life of Judah, his mistakes that he made, but then even where he tried to start making things right. And Lord, we just ask for wisdom as we look into this. May you be honored and glorified in this study tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. Studying this passage, I was thinking about in 2 Samuel. Was talking about one of David's sons, and it's the one son that raped his sister, his half-sister. And I kept thinking about, that in that passage it says, but he had a friend. And a lot of people like to go to that passage to talk about how, a bad friend can have a bad impact on you. And I looked at this and I thought, wow, how come no one's ever preached about the Adulamite whose name was Hira? This guy was a bad friend. That other guy was a bad friend too. He gave some horrible advice. And that's a situation I'm like, was he a bad friend or was he just a fool who had no wisdom in giving advice to somebody? This one here, this friend, Judah, let's get our perspective here. Judah's an adult. And so it's a warning even to us adults that, man, we can pick bad friends. He's not a little kid. We always talk to kids about how, hey, be careful about who your friends are. Well, us adults, we need to be careful too. We need to take that advice ourselves and just make sure that we're surrounding ourselves with good people that are desirous to do what's right. Judah here made a mistake of making this guy his friend. He turns down to him. And he's hanging out with this Adulamite. And because of this guy's influence, Judah's in the wrong place. And he ends up meeting this girl that's a Canaanite. And the Jews were not to intermingle with the Canaanites. But here, Judah does. And I don't know for sure. I'll say this. In verse 12... it talks about his wife dying, and in process of time, the daughter of Shua, Judah's wife, died. Okay? And over here, in verse 2, it just says, he saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua, and he took her and went in unto her. I don't know if he got married to her here, or later on they got married. The impression I get from verse 2 is Judah's just committing fornication with this woman. He sees a girl, he likes her, she pleases him, and he takes her and he fornicates with her. He's not, and then at some point, maybe, oh man, because what happens today? Oh, you got her pregnant, now you got to marry her. Well, where did that start? Possibly way back here. Judah's sitting there going, oh man, I got her pregnant. I guess I need to marry her and take care of the kid. So when did the marriage happen? I'm not sure. The impression I have is it didn't happen at the beginning here in verse 2. But he ends up getting this girl pregnant. And his friend says nothing about it. Nothing negative about that. Hey, no big deal. Then, one other thing about this friend that he's not a good friend. Judah ends up coming down to him again to shear sheep with him. And he's in a bad place. Shouldn't be there. And Judah ends up going into what he thinks is a harlot. Gets his daughter-in-law pregnant. And look in verse 20. It says, and Judah sent the kid by the hand of his friend the Adulamite to receive his pledge from the woman's hand, but he found her not. So his friend, instead of condemning Judah for what he did, ends up condoning it. And is willing to say, hey, yeah, you need me to take the payment and pay off your debt to this harlot? Sure, I'll do that. He doesn't do it himself. Judah doesn't do it himself. He has his friend go do it. And his friend goes instead and tries to pay off this debt. This is not a good friend. It's not one. This is the only time we see him. We don't see him anymore. I wonder if Judah finally wisened up a little bit after by the time we get to the end of this chapter, he does start to see some things in a different light. I wonder if he finally decides to cut ties with this friend. Back there in verses 1 through 11, Judah has 3 sons born to him. We have Onan, and Shelah. Is the firstborn. He's so wicked. We're not told what he's doing, but he's so wicked that God kills him because of how wicked he is. Look there. Look there in verse 7. And Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and it says, and the Lord slew him. This is the first time we have God slaying a single person. I know he sent the flood and killed all of mankind except for 8 for their wickedness. But here is the first time we see him seeking out one particular individual and killing that one individual because of their wickedness. This is the state of Judah's family right now. He's not doing right himself. He's not raising his sons up to fear the Lord because is so wicked. And then Onan, he rebels against his duty. He rebels against this. We're going to look at this here in just a second. This idea of a brother taking his brother's dead wife, the widow of, and having a child with her in the name of the older brother. This is something that was common back then. This is something God wanted them to do. And here Onan, he takes his brother's wife. He goes into her, but then at the last second, he's like, no way. He goes, I don't want to give my brother, because I don't want to give my seed to my brother. It was a way for him to honor his brother by allowing the firstborn to be named after his brother. And instead he decides, no, I don't want to honor my brother. I don't want to do that. And God ends up killing him for this disobedience, this rebellion here. Because this was something he was supposed to do. And then we have Shelah. And Shelah is real young. Judah ends up withholding Shelah from Tamar because he's too young. He's not ready. And also he's afraid that, my 2 oldest boys are dead now because one was wicked, one disobeyed. I don't want anything bad to happen to him, so I'm going to wait. Go to Deuteronomy 25, and we get a picture of this practice here. Deuteronomy 25 in verses 5 through 10. It says, if brethren dwell together and one of them die and have no child, the wife of the dead shall not marry without unto a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go in unto her and take her to him to wife and perform the husband's brother unto her. So this is known as the duty of a husband's brother. And it shall be that the firstborn which she beareth shall succeed in the name of his brother which is dead, that his name be not put out of Israel. And if the man like not to take his brother's wife, then let his brother's wife go up to the gate unto the elders and say, my husband's brother refuseth to raise up unto his brother a man in Israel. He will not perform the duty of my husband's brother. Then the elders of his city shall call him and speak unto him. And if he stand to it and say, I like not to take her, then shall his brother's wife come unto him in the presence of the elders, and loose his shoe from off his foot, and spit in his face, and shall answer and say, so shall it be done unto that man that will not build up his brother's house. And his name shall be called in Israel, the house of him that hath his shoe loosed. So this was a practice. Look over in the book of Ruth. This is not something we see done very much. We hear about it in Genesis, and then in the book of Ruth, we see it again. Let's let's see here. Let's look in Ruth chapter 4. We're going to jump down to verse 5. Boaz has been confronted by Ruth, asked to, hey, would you redeem our property? Her father-in-law had property, and they ended up leaving and going to Moab, which would have belonged to her husband, but he was dead. All of the men of this family were dead. And so technically Naomi and Ruth, they had rights to this property, but they needed a man to come in and claim it for them. And so she is asking Boaz to do that, asking Boaz to marry her. And Boaz said, well, there's one person that's ahead of me. He goes, I cannot claim this because there's another man who's closer to you in the family. So that's the thing. It was the closest relative was supposed to be the one to marry. And so here we have a situation here, which I think is interesting. They're not even brothers. This is just a relative of the family. So this was obviously a very common practice in Israel, that if need be, that the next of kin would step in. Look at verse 5. It says, Then said Boaz, what day thou buyest the field of the hand of Naomi, thou must also of Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. And the kinsman said, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I mar mine own inheritance. Redeem thou my right to thyself, for I cannot redeem it. Now this was the manner in former time in Israel concerning redeeming and concerning changing, for to confirm all things, a man plucked off his shoe and gave it to his neighbor, and this was a testimony in Israel. Therefore the kinsman said unto Boaz, buy it for thee. So he drew off his shoe. So here we actually get to see this practice taking place, where a man was given the opportunity to redeem a field. He was given the opportunity to raise an inheritance to a man of Israel that had died. And he ends up saying, I can't do that. I'm going to mar my own inheritance. And so we don't see the spitting. I don't see the spitting of the face, but I see the loosing of the shoe, and that man went home with one less shoe. I'm sure his journey home was a little bit more uncomfortable than his journey to the gate to talk to Boaz. He wasn't expecting that he should have brought a second pair of shoes. So go back to Genesis here. This was a common practice. So this thing that happens here with Onan, refusing to do that. He refused to do the duty of the dead brother's wife. This is a common practice. Duty of a husband's brother. Sorry, that's what it's called in Deuteronomy. The duty of a husband's brother. He was supposed to honor his brother and raise up seed for him, and he ends up not doing it. And God is very greatly displeased with that he's not willing to do that. And so God ends up killing him. Look there in verse 12. Let's read 12 through 26, and then we'll kind of break some of these things down here. It says, and in process of time, the daughter of Shua, Judah's wife, died, and Judah was comforted and went up unto his sheep shearers to Timnath, he and his friend Hira the Adulamite. And it was told Tamar, saying, behold, thy father-in-law goeth up to Timnath to shear his sheep. And she put her widow's garments off from her, and covered her with a veil, and wrapped herself, and sat in an open place, which is by the way in Timnath. For she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given unto him to wife. When Judah saw her, he thought her to be an harlot, because she had covered her face. And he turned unto her by the way, and said, go to, I pray thee, let me come in unto thee. For he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, what wilt thou give me, that thou mayest come in unto me? And he said, I will send thee a kid from the flock. And she said, wilt thou give me a pledge till thou send it? And he said, what pledge shall I give thee? And she said, thy signet, and thy bracelets, and thy staff that is in thine hand. And he gave it her, and came in unto her, and she conceived by him. And she arose, and went away, and laid by her veil from her, and put on the garments of her widowhood. And Judah sent the kid by the hand of his friend, the Adulamite, to receive his pledge from the woman's hand, but he found her not. Then he asked the men of that place, saying, where is the harlot that was openly by the wayside? And they said, there was no harlot in this place. And he returned to Judah and said, I cannot find her. And also the men of the place said that there was no harlot in this place. And Judah said, let her take it to her, lest we be shamed. Behold, I sent this kid, and thou hast not found her. Let's pause right there for a minute. Why would Judah, here's the question. Why would Judah go in to an harlot? Why would he pay somebody for sex? Why would he do this? If we look at verse 2 and go, well, he did it with the Canaanite woman who later became his wife. This is a habit. This is a pattern where he is just, he wants to satisfy his sexual fleshly desires. He's just going to go do it. But what leads him to do this? What leads men to drink? What leads men to alcohol? What leads men to have anger, out of control anger? What leads men to have any kind of addiction? What leads men to, we even we're going to call our comfort food, right? And we're going to just sit there and we're going to eat and eat and eat, and we lose control of what we're eating and how much we're eating. Like, what leads men to be addicts and to try to do these things? Well, I look at Judah and it's pain. Before we get too hard on Judah for what he did, let's look at some things going on in his life right now that led him to this point. And what it is it's not that so much that he had all these things happen in his life. It's the fact he didn't deal with it. He didn't process it. When we allow these things to well up and we just bottle them up and we don't actually process the hurt that we're going through, it's going to come out in different ways. Some in different forms of addiction, some in anger, some it comes out different ways. So first thing is this pain with rejection from dad. Judah is the son of the hated wife. That's how Scripture put it. It said, Rachel he loved and Leah he hated. Well, if you hate the woman, you're not going to be real kind with the children of that hated woman. And he's got 4 wives to pick and choose from. He picks his favorite, loves her, and we see he even dotes on Rachel's children more than anyone else. Joseph is just the favored kid. And we saw that in the previous chapter. He gets the coat of many colors. Not anyone else, just Joseph. And, that these other boys have enough going on that they're not the greatest thing either. But, and Joseph, he's a righteous man. Joseph is wanting to do right, so that just helps him get in better favor with dad, which probably drives that wedge in there with the other brothers. But Judah's getting rejection from dad. He's seen a lot of things go on, and he's dealing with that pain. He's never really fully processed it, and so he's got that. How about this? Remember, this takes place after chapter 37, over a period of time. But this is, I believe God put it here because he then puts his emphasis on Joseph. But Joseph was in Egypt for many years. I don't remember the math off the top of my head. I've done it, but I think it's close to, it's like anywhere from 15 to 20 years that he's in Egypt before he finally meets up with his family again. All of chapter 38 is happening during that time. And so what else is, definitely by verse 12, it's all of 37 has come and gone. It's been years. So how about guilt? The pain of the guilt for selling Joseph. If we were to fast forward, they all think that Joseph's dead. When they get to Egypt, And they're getting this negative from, they don't know it's Joseph. It's the second in command of Egypt. They're getting all this horrible treatment from him. They're sitting there going, oh man, this is because of what we did to Joseph. He's dead. And they think he's dead by now. They sold him into slavery. There's no way he got treated well. Like, he is long gone. He's dead. So he's dealing with the guilt for having sold his little brother. So that's the thing. As soon as that caravan walked off, a week later, how are those guys going to find him? They're not. He's gone. They have no idea where that caravan went. It was headed towards Egypt, but did they stop and sell him there, or did they keep going into Africa? They don't know. They're clueless as to where Joseph is at this point. And so the guilt of selling Joseph, the guilt of lying to dad. Okay? So then they go to dad and they say, man, Joseph is dead. Now what? Well, he's trying to soothe his guilt and soothe his dad. And he's not able to. Remember, dad, part of this too is dad is forever mourning. When we see the sons come back from Egypt, they go and they say, Dad, we need to bring Benjamin with us. And what does Dad say? No, lest he die like Joseph. So all those years that Joseph's in Egypt, Jacob is sitting there mourning the fact that Joseph is dead. And that's all he can talk about. That's all he can think about. That's all that's on his mind. And this is he sees this on a daily basis. Or every time he sees dad, this is brought up. That Joseph's gone. It's just constant dagger at him. That just another reminder, you sold your brother, you killed him. How about the pain of losing two sons? He just had two of his sons die. He's got 3 boys, 2 of them dead. I don't know about you, but how'd you like to have 2 of your kids die within a very short period of time? Like that's probably, I don't know the time frame here, but we're not talking years, we're talking a couple of months. Because you're gonna have time to mourn for the death of the oldest son, and then as soon as the time of mourning, because they literally do have a time of mourning. It's this X amount of days. When that time of mourning is done, let's start getting back to life, business as usual kind of thing. And so it would have been, okay, Onan, go do your duty as the brother. And then boom, Onan's dead. And Judah is burying another son. So he still hasn't he's processing this pain. And then if you look at verse 12, I don't know if we saw that, but wife dies. This is all just, he's not processing this stuff. It's just bottled up, just. What does he do? He acts out. He goes and he finds a harlot and decides, well, I want to forget the pain. That's what an addict does. They don't want to deal with the hurt. They don't want to deal with what's hard. They want to forget about it. And I'll just go do this pleasurable thing. And so he goes into Tamar and sees her and seeks her out. Now he doesn't know it's Tamar. Tamar, she's dealing with her own pain. She's feeling rejected and forgotten. Look at verse 14. And she put her widow's garment off from her and covered her with a veil and wrapped herself and sat in the open place, which is by the way in Timnath. For she saw that Shelah was grown and she was not given unto him to wife. So now she's hurting too. She's got her own pains. She's wanting to get married. She wants to be cared for by a husband. And she sees, well, there he is, and I'm not being given to him. She's feeling rejected. She's feeling forgotten. And so she acts out a little bit differently. She goes and plays a harlot. Both of these people, they're a mess. They're struggling in life. They're not asking for help. They're just trying to figure it out on their own, and it is not working out very good. Judah meets her, and he wants to come in under her. He wants to be with her. She says, "Well, what are you going to give me? What's my payment? What are you going to pay me?" And they didn't deal with cash back then. There was that was bartering, or you'd give precious metals. And so he offers her, "Hey, I'll give you a kid of the flock. Give him a baby, baby sheep, baby goat, something young that's useful. It's going to have a lot of life." He says, I'll give you a kid of the flock so that we can come together." And so she's all right, that sounds good, but what's going to be the pledge? How do I know you're going to keep your word? You don't have a kid of the flock with you right now. What are you going to give me so I know you'll follow through with your word? And so he gives her his bracelet, his signet, and his staff behind. And he leaves that behind with her, and he gives it as a pledge. Of course, then Judah has his friend, the Hira, the Adulamite. He comes and he takes this stuff. He takes the kid to go meet the harlot, and he finds out everyone, he's talking to everybody in town. They say, there's been no harlot here. What are you talking about? Obviously, apparently back then it was a common thing. Like if there was a harlot in the way, that she was at one location all the time. She was beyond her corner. She looked a certain way. That's why Tamar was able to do what she did. She made herself look a certain way and got the attention of Judah. What is sad here about Judah? Look at verse 21. Nope, my bad. 23. And Judah said, "Let her take it to her, lest we be shamed. Behold, I sent this kid, and thou hast not found her." Judah is more concerned about not being able to pay his whore debt than he is the fact that he was with one.
But wasn't he trying to get his signet and his staff and everything back? I think that's what he was doing. He's trying to trade.
Yeah, he's trying to get his stuff back, but at the same time, he's more worried. He says, it's the term "lest we be shamed." He's saying, we've done what we could to try to pay somebody. It's that idea of like, I want to pay my debts off. I don't want to owe anybody anything. And that's a good, yes, we should want to pay our debts off. But he's more worried about paying off this debt to a whore than he is the fact that he went into one and made a deal with one. And that's his spiritual state is not very good here. Then look at verses 24 to 26. It says, "And it came to pass about 3 months after, that it was told Judah, saying, Tamar thy daughter-in-law hath played the harlot." What that means is not that she's played the harlot to him. We know that information. They're just saying, man, she's played the harlot because she's pregnant. She's been with somebody that is not her husband. "And also, behold, she is with child by whoredom. And Judah said, Bring her and let her be burnt. When she was brought forth, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, By the man whose these are am I with child. And she said, Discern, I pray thee, whose are these, the signet and bracelets and staff? And Judah acknowledged them and said, She hath been more righteous than I, because that I gave her not to Shelah my son, and he knew her again no more." Judah's response is, it's rough. Bring her forth and let her be burnt. He wants to publicly humiliate her. And then kill her. That's his immediate response. Bring her forth and let her be burnt. We need to be careful not to be so quick to pass judgment and harsh judgment on people. He's about to get it he's going to get the Uno reverse card thrown at him here, because he's sitting here pointing the finger at her going, my goodness, I can't believe you do this, when he 3 months ago as well was doing the same thing. But nobody knows. See, the man can go in and do his deed and then walk away and no big deal. But if a woman does and she gets pregnant, it's pretty obvious what's happened. And he's sitting here quick to cast judgment on her. And he's real quiet, hoping that Hira, his friend, will not make mention to anybody that he tried to pay off his debt to a whore. See, the only people that know about that situation are Tamar, Hira, and Judah. Nobody else knows that Judah was out with a whore. Just those three. And Hira, just because, all right, Judah, you told me to go take care of your deed, I'll do it. I'll pay off your debt. And he was even careful to, he doesn't mention Judah's name to the men of that place. He just says, hey, where's the harlot that was in here? And Judah's just he's quick to cast judgment on Tamar. We need to, and God is gracious and he's very merciful to us. I believe we need to be careful, hey folks, I'm saying this preaching to myself, okay? I need to be careful, because it's so easy to us in our pride and our own flesh and our self-righteousness to just be like, oh man, yeah, I can't believe you did that. It's like, you're no better. And in this situation, he literally was no better. It wasn't like, oh, there's something else in your life that he was just as guilty as she was. And I notice he's not quick in verse 26 to say, oh, let me be burnt as well. He sure backpedals very quickly. She shows him, she pulls out the bracelet, the signet, and the staff. I don't know how this all plays out. I've wondered, to me personally, I feel like, they're dragging her into him, throw him at his feet, because he's going to make a public example of her. And she just says, can I give an answer? And he says, sure, I'll let you give an answer, thinking it's not going to make a difference. And she shows him and says, I'm pregnant by the person who owns this stuff. And shows him the staff, signet, and bracelet. And it just cut him quick. His response is a lot better in verse 26 than it is in verse 24. Judah acknowledged and said, she hath been more righteous than I, because that I gave her not to Shelah, and he knew her again no more. Judah acknowledges his own sin. Obviously, he calls off the burning of Tamar, ends up not burning her, and realizes I'm in the wrong. And this right here, verse 26, is his turning point. Things start to change here for Judah, and we'll pick up with him in the weeks to come as we get further on down the road. But this is a major turning point for him. And the key factors here, one of the key factors is humility, honesty. He was honest with himself, realized his own sin. He was humble enough to acknowledge it, realized, you know what, she was much better than he didn't do her right by providing Shelah to be her husband. We don't see it, but I'm sure that hitting him in the face that, oh yeah, that's my signet, that's my bracelet, that's my staff. I'm the one that got you pregnant. And he just realized, man, I'm wrong. Here I was to quickly cast judgment on you when I should be getting burnt right next to you. And of course, he doesn't want to get burnt. And so he chooses to forgive and realizes he needs to work on himself. And this is a turning point for him. Humility and honesty are some key things we've definitely got to have in our own life. And they're things we have to have, humility towards others, Got to swallow that pride. That pride will ruin people so bad. It gets us to do things we never thought we would be capable of doing. It gets us to treat people horribly. People we love, people we say we love. We tell them, I love you. And then our pride treats them like garbage. And we don't think we are. Man, I've had that. I'm like, what do you mean I'm treating you bad? I'm treating you fine. And then realize later that, no, I'm treating you bad. It's when we humble ourselves and are willing to acknowledge that our pride is getting the better of us that we can actually make that change. Verses 27 through 30. This is, I don't know, this is interesting to me. We see the birth of the boys. They're twins. It says, and it came to pass in the time of her travail that, behold, twins were in her womb. And it came to pass when she travailed that the one put out his hand, and the midwife took and bound upon his hand a scarlet thread, saying, this came out first. And it came to pass, as he drew back his hand, that, behold, his brother came out. And she said, how hast thou broken forth? This breach be upon thee. Therefore his name was called Pharez. And afterward came out his brother, that had the scarlet thread upon his hand, and his name was called Zerah. These boys were some very active boys. Here at the birth, you got one, literally reaches his hand out, so and the midwife is like, puts a scarlet thread, this is the firstborn. He's out of the womb first. And the kid pulls his hand back, and the other one is like, get out of the way, buddy. And Pharez says, I'm coming out first. And he pushes his brother out, and he ends up getting born first. I mean, wow. I was there when my wife had both our boys. It was, labor is hard and difficult, let alone having two boys sitting there wrestling with each other to determine who gets to come out first and be born first. Oh my goodness. Pharez gets this curse put upon him. He has this curse that because of this breach, this midwife, she puts this curse on him. She's like, cursed are you because you've broken this. You did something you weren't supposed to do. He's an infant. I mean, a kid doesn't even know yet. So this kid has very little going for him. He's the son of a pregnancy caused by whoredom. Then he's cursed on the day of his birth, just because he pushed his older brother out of the way and decided to actually get born first, not just put his hand out first. And yet, look what God does for him. Go to Matthew 1. Matthew 1 and verse 1. It says, the book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham begat Isaac, and Isaac begat Jacob, and Jacob begat Judas and his brethren, and Judas begat Pharez and Tamar of Thamar, and Pharez begat Esrom, and Esrom begat Aram. Pharez ends up becoming the one that's in the line of Christ. I don't know what else happens to these boys. We don't get a glimpse in the picture of their life, but God chooses to use this young man who, son of whoredom, ends up getting cursed on the first day of his birth, and yet God says, you know what? You're going to be part of the line of Christ. And if you look through the line of Christ, I mean, it's just person after person after person after person that started out a mess, but finished out okay. And that's one of the takeaways I get from this chapter is just because you have a horrible start doesn't mean you can't have a great finish. Judah, man, he's got a horrible start. We see a big mess in this chapter. But Judah's end is going to end up being really amazing, and he ends up having the line of Christ come through him. You'd think God would choose Joseph to be the line of Christ, but it's Judah. Judah is the one that ends up having the line of Christ through him. And then same with Pharez here. Has a horrible beginning, but ends up, man, he's in the line of Christ. What else can we take away from this? When pain and difficulties come, we need to not isolate ourselves, but rather surround ourselves with a good community to help process what's going on. Judah he's got a lot of pain in his life that he never worked through. And he ends up isolating himself, and then the people he does have around him as community are not good friends. Be careful about the friends that you have. They will either lift you up or they will tear you down. They will either encourage you to do wrong or they'll encourage you to do righteousness. And Judah picked a bad friend at this time. This friend was encouraging him to do that which was sin instead of encouraging him to do that which was right. Anybody else have any comments on this chapter? All right. Let's go to prayer tonight. William, can you go get me a prayer list?